Today, webinar is being organized by International Council for Human Development, based in Belgium, in collaboration with our sister Tribune, the online newspaper. The topic of this webinar is human rights and the responsibility of human being. It is being held in connection with International Day of Human Rights, which would be tomorrow, 10th of December. Basically, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted 10th December 1948 by the General Assembly of United Nations, and it was the first international agreement between the countries members of the United Nations. Among 58 countries, 48 countries voted in favor of this declaration, and this was first great initiative toward protection of human rights. This declaration has 30 articles. Its first article is very important, which is focusing on freedom of human being. Its first sentence is, we are all born free. And second section, we all have our own thoughts, ideas, and we should all be treated the same way. This is very important because it's focusing on the independent and free thoughts of human being. And then there are several declarations, treaties, and the agreements concerning the human rights, rights of women, rights of children. Today we have speakers from different countries. We have Ms. Marjan Lucas. She is political psychologist, and she have large experience in connection with the human rights. She is based in Holland, and her topic of today's speech is concerning the solidarity in connection with human rights. Because as we have rights as human beings, we have also responsibility to express solidarity with other people. We have also Mr. Raza Syed. He is based in Belgium, chair of International Council for Human Development. He is currently in Muzaffarabad, the capital of Azad Kashmir. And his topic would be regarding the activities concerning human rights based in European Union. Specifically, we'll focus on the rights of the people of Kashmir. We have also a very respectable speaker from Pakistan, Mr. Munawar Mahar. He is faculty member of National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad. And his topic is concerning human security. Mr. Munawar, you are welcome. We have also a speaker from India. He is a research scholar at Warsaw University, a faculty of political science and international study, Mr. Simant Bharti. He will talk about the rights of the minorities, including religious and tribal groups. Specifically, we will focus on the rights of the Dalit communities. We have also honorable speaker from Indian Kashmir, Mr. Roshan Akbar. He is basically from Srinagar, but at the moment he is doing research at Faculty of Political Science and International Study at University of Warsaw. He recently visited Kashmir, including Srinagar and other parts, and he is witness of the post 5th August happenings in Indian Kashmir. I would like to invite Mr. Roshan Akbar, who can talk about the pre-5th August and the post-5th August 2019 situation in Indian Kashmir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Sibtain, for having me. Good evening to everyone, first of all, and let me introduce briefly. My name is Roshan, and I'm from Indian administered Kashmir. Well, I'm born in such an era which was uprising in Kashmir, 1989. So I have seen the human rights violation day in and day out. First, let me tell you what's Article 35A and 370. So these two articles have been given to Kashmir at the time of partition, when Kashmir acceded to India. So the 35A was giving a right to Kashmiris that no one from outside Kashmir can come and reside in Kashmir and settle down there and become a permanent resident. So the Article 370, it was also gives right to Kashmiris to have their own constitution. The abrogation of Article 370 and 35A on 5th of August 2019, it had a lot of circumstances. While I traveled before 300, this abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, and post this abrogation as well. So now the India has a legal and direct control over Kashmir. There wouldn't be any assembly. There wouldn't be any partial government from Kashmir. So it is centrally governed. While we speak about the human rights in Kashmir, we must remember it is the most militarized zone in the world. Almost 1 million security forces are in Kashmir. So they have given a different powers like AFSPA, PSA, DAA. These kind of powers give them more control over locals to arrest them without warrant. And once you are in Kashmir, you will see fear, you will see threat. You will see the youth involving in the uprisings in 1989 that has been deviated now. Because all the separation groups who used to speak, who used to be the forefront of the Kashmiris are now in jails. They are not with the people there. The voices, they are not heard now. So you can see that fear. You can see some invisible hands are behind that, and you can see the visible soldiers around Kashmir. So these barricades, torture centers, and the mass rapes, which we have heard or which we have studied during our academy or in the media, there are certain examples about that. There is Kunan Poshpura mass rape incident, where the oldest woman who was raped was 93 years and the elder one was 13 years. And there have been other incidents related to that as well. Coming back to the human rights violation, post 5th August 2019 and pre 5th August 2019, I can say there is not a much difference, but the more are involving the youths now psychologically. You can say, like, while I have been there for a few months, I have analyzed like how youths have been struggling because their voices are not heard, because they are not in a situation where they can speak about and they will be heard. The major role has been played by the media, the right hand media. They are state sponsored, They spread propaganda, and it's hard to believe the outer side of the world that these human rights violations are happening in Kashmir, especially those people who are not much known to it or who are not much literate. There has been several attempts by the United Nations. There has been several resolutions given by the United Nations to end this human rights violation. However, not a single attempt has been succeeded. There has been, for example, if we speak about Kashmir, we go through the conflict between Kashmir conflict between India and Pakistan, or Kashmir dispute between India and Pakistan, and there was also some steps taken by the United Nations, like plebiscite or right to self-determination. And according to them, there should have been a partial judgment given to the Kashmiris, and they will decide what's good for them, which unfortunately didn't happen. And this human rights violation has reached to the level now those activists who used to speak for the people of Kashmir, for example, APDP, Association of Parents Disappeared People, their offices have been shut by the central government, though they are working for the welfare of the people of Kashmir, but they are not heard now. Recently, we came across a news about APDP office, which is run by the by a woman. She is the head of the association, and she is running this association for the people whose beloved ones have been lost or have been disappeared, not even lost. If someone is lost, you still have a news about that he will not come back or she will not come back. But someone who's disappeared, you are still waiting for him or her. So such tactics has been used to just have the more force centrally forced by the India to the Kashmiris, so that their basic rights will be violated. I will be very open to the questions rather than speaking about these all situations what happened in Kashmir. So if you have any questions, I have recently visited in Kashmir. I am from Kashmir. My research is based on Kashmir. So I think I will be the best person to ask this question, and I will be really honest with all the answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roshan Akbar. Now I request Mr. Munawar Mahar. He is the faculty member of National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad. His topic is concerning women security. Women security has three important parts. One is the personal security as human being, other is the community security, and third one is the political security. He will explain, and I invite Mr. Munawar Mahar, please speak.
Thank you, Shah, for having me in this wonderful webinar. And good evening to all. Here it is good evening in Pakistan, maybe in Europe it's good morning. Anyways, before coming to the core of the topic, as we celebrate International Human Rights Day tomorrow on 10th of December, let me give you a historical tour of what human security is all about and how it has evolved, and what is the relationship between human security and human rights. As you know that the biggest takeaway of this corona pandemic that continues to destroy the lives and livelihoods across the globe, the biggest takeaway of this corona is human security. That people are desperate, people are crying for the health security. They are more worried they are demanding the security against joblessness, against hunger, against this disease pandemic, and the sort of issues. So this is the greatest takeaway of this current pandemic. But let me give you, let me put it in a historical perspective, human security. As you know that the annals of human history, they are testament to the fact that human security preceded the state security. How? If you take a look at the hunting and gathering society that was primarily concerned about the most basic necessities of life, food and shelter. If you take a look at the life of the earliest humans, it revolved around the hunting and gathering as a sustained source of food that was critical to their survival and to thrive. The traditional security that we are obsessed with today is a later development in this unfolding drama of human civilization and its development. This concept of traditional security that began it began to crystallize with the domestication of these wild plants like wheat, rice, corn, and animals, dog, sheep, goat, leading to the dawn of agriculture some 12,000 years ago. Now, this adoption of agriculture, it gave birth to a settled human lifestyle and accumulation of material wealth that required the security measures against the initially against the theft and this pledge from the rivals, from the enemies. Now, this fast forward to this human security. The Global Human Security Development Report of 1994 by the United Nations, it heralded a revival of human security approach. This seminal report, it laid the philosophical and the institutional foundations of human security. Basically, this report defines human security as the freedom from want, freedom from fear, and freedom from indignity. Now, these are the three most important components or pillars of human security. They underpin the human security. There are different types of human security, like personal security, social security, political security, economic security, cultural security, security of community, physical security. These are different types of human security, but it is underpinned by these three principles, these three things, that freedom from fear, want, and indignity. Now, how this human security is related to the human rights? Let me tell you that human security is impossible without the human rights, because you cannot have a dignified life, you cannot have your dignity, you cannot be free from fear and free from want and hunger without access to the fundamentals of life, without having religious freedom, without having social freedom, without having cultural freedom, without having access to the fundamentals of life, without having right to education, right to employment, the sort of fundamental human rights that we know. So that was the historical perspective of human security and how it relates to the human rights. And you know that this pandemic, it has multiplied these human insecurities that are leading to more and more and greater human rights violations across the globe. So the human rights, they have assumed more importance and more and greater meaning and dimension in the context of this pandemic. Thank you, Shah Sahab. That was.
Thank you so much, Mr. Munawar. Mahar, you also indicated about the coronavirus pandemic. This is also very important to express solidarity with the other people. Those have difficulties, specifically the patients admitted in the hospitals or the people those are infected by this virus. Now I invite Mr. Simant Bharti. He is a research scholar at Political Science and International Study Faculty, University of Warsaw. Yes, Mr. Simant Bharti, please.
Thank you, Dr. Syed Saab, for wonderful webinar organizing. And now I'm going to talk about the current situation, human rights situation in India, especially in the context of last 4 years. And I have prepared a presentation. If you allow, I can share with you all. And wait a moment. No, it's my presentation is visible for you. Hello.
Yes, it's visible. Thank
Okay.
you.
Uh, so this is my topic: the human rights situation, minorities, and Dalit and religious tribal groups in India. And I would like to start from the beginning of this the new government which established in 2014 after the General Assembly election. It's called the Narendra Modi government, and he's the current Prime Minister of India. And last year, he won again the election, and it's continued. And I will talk about this period only, and these are the points of the discussion for the today. I will present two perspectives: one critical, and another is the government and supporters perspective. The first, I would like to talk about the persecution of activists and lawyers and human rights defenders and journalists. And in the last few years, the India has seen the many situation has totally changed. It's never happened before. Like the activists are like if they are talking against the government, and they are arresting, and they are imposing the different laws they created in last few years. So you can see on the screen the like India activist arrested in, and is this the political witch hunts, and India and Dalit rights activists detained, and many things happened. And you can see the urban Naxal, the new word they invented, the government the ministers, and they called them the urban Naxal. Urban Naxal, basically it's come from the Naxal movement, and who is supporting the Naxal movement, and they called the like intellectuals the urban Naxals. And these people are the Sudha Bhardwaj, Gautam Navlakya, and Vara Rao, and Venon Gonzalez, and Arun Freda. And these are the prominent supporter of rights of the disadvantaged people in India. And the next I talked about the like how they restricted fund for the NGO in India who is working for the disadvantaged groups and the human rights activities. And the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, they changed and they tightened the foreign aid receipt by the NGOs, and who is talking about the against the government or anything. And next, in the previous years, the India has seen like mob attack and on the many religious minorities and the marginalized people, and especially the intellectual who also mob lynched by the people back in India. And till now 113 people killed in the last 5 years. It's data from the Quint from since 2015. And it's if you see the last the here the Indian police recently arrested 110 people in Maharashtra. Why? There is recently the coalition government is ruling under the support of the Congress party. So that's why here is somehow rule is working, but other parts of India it has not seen like that. Even in India there is no law to law for the mob lynching. If somebody is mob lynched and death, there can't be, nobody can be arrested. Actually, there is no law. So state's view sought on the need for the mob lynching law, and many civil societies and organizations, they are asking and demanding for this law for the mob lynching and mob attack in India. The next is Dalit untouchable and continued. This is practicing from the more than 5,000 and 2,500 years, and this is very old system where the Indian society divided in 4 parts, mainly the upper caste and last of the bottom, the untouchable Dalits they called, and they are affecting, and like girls from Dalit, they are in India they are getting raped widely, especially in Uttar Pradesh of India. And recently this has seen in the last this coronavirus periods, and many women raped, and they were especially from the Dalit community. And you can see on the screen some clips of the newspaper. And recently in India, the Indian Constitution of India, they providing the rights for the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. It's called Dalit and the tribal groups. And like before there was a right and anybody can file the FIR, but now recently change the law, and you can't go to the police and you can't file a FIR, because the pre investigation will be conducted by the inspector or police, and then after they can register whether this is this thing happened or not. So this is overall like the like violation of this law. And recently Supreme Court also provoked, and they told they can't snatch these rights from the Dalit communities of India, and government has to rethink about this. And the last year there was the 26th anniversary of the National Human Rights Commission of India, and the Home Minister Amit Shah, he visited, and he was the chief guest of this program. And he told, we will not accept the Western standard of human rights, and it will not apply on India. And we have to rethink from our perspective, from the Indian perspective. And you can tell more about like Hindu and Hindu propaganda and this perspective to look the human rights Indian perspective. And he told in that speech, there is no bigger violation of human rights than those affected of militants in Kashmir and Naxals. We must look at these issues with an Indian outlook. So he doesn't want to accept like there is any kind of human rights violation or not. So he's just preparing the like only the like militants or Naxal is attacking. That's only the human rights on the civilians. How the Indian intellectuals and somebody's speaking against the government of this current BJP government, and they are they are getting arrested from the use of this Unlawful Activity and Prevention Act, UAPA, and this is the key counter-terrorism act and imposed by the government. And you can see on the screen recently like many Dalit activists and other intellectuals they caught only under this law, and they imposed this counter-terrorism law for like they told like they are supporting militants in Kashmir and other regions of India. That's why they got arrested. And even the BJP leaders and supporters, they promoted ultra nationalism and Hindu nationalism in the last several years. Even every BJP, the government ministers, they are talking about the Hindu supremacy and the entire India. And recently the Yogi Adityanath, he became a few years back the chief minister of big state of India called Uttar Pradesh. And Yogi Adityanath, he renamed of several Mughal era's name, like you can see on the screen. Allahabad became now Prayagraj, and now recently in municipal election in Hyderabad, and he told Hyderabad name should changed to Bhagyanagar. This is just a few days back incident in India, Hyderabad. And there's a big role of social media and WhatsApp to manufacturation of this the hate speech and hate videos. They are spreading at the mass level in India, and even the BJP has their own, it's called the BJP IT cell. They are also spreading the somehow this hate and across the India, and due to this, like many people mob lynch due to the misleading WhatsApp message. And you can see on the screen some news clips I'm sharing with you. Or then I would like to conclude the current situation of the Indian human rights is occurring like it's in very transition period, and there is no certain even the opposition is countered by the BJP leaders and even their supporters. So the current situation of human rights in drastically changed in the last 5 to 6 years. And I would like to finish my presentation here. And if you have any question, you can ask me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simant Bharti. Very wider but brief presentation, which is very useful because you focused on the rights of the minorities, specifically the Dalit communities. Thank you very much. And now I request Mr. Alida Sayed, who is working for the human rights in European headquarters, Belgium, for a long time. And his topic is about how the European Union view the human rights in South Asia, including Kashmir. Mr. Alida Sayed, thank you so much for participating in this webinar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sibtain Shah, inviting me in this very important webinar. And I heard the other speakers telling the stories and telling their point of view about the human rights. And I will just briefly, I will talk about the situation. And, it's now 70 years that the Human Rights Charter was established. Everybody is celebrating International Human Rights Day tomorrow on 10th of December. A lot of people in different parts of the world and different organizations, they are celebrating, and they are trying to understand that after 70 years, when the Charter was created, still in the world, there are different parts of the world, human rights violations are continuing. And we did not achieve the objective which was set 70 years ago. But hopefully, I hope that in future, as the people who are determined to fight for their rights, they are trying to convince those oppressors or the dictators or the fascist regimes, and even in democratic societies also, there are some the rights are not given to the people. I will not go into details, but I will come back to Kashmir. As I am also from Kashmir, and I have a lot of interest that my people who are suffering from the human rights violations by the Indian government in Indian occupied Kashmir, it should stop. So for that reason, in Brussels, where the institutions are there, the European institutions, and especially the European Union, which its foundations are based on human rights, and the European Union is playing a very important role in the world, especially about the human rights. So we are trying to convince them also to raise this issue in front of the people of Europe, that what is happening with the people of Jammu and Kashmir, it should be listened, and it should not be ignored, because there are some the financial interests, there are business interests. All over the world, the countries, they have their different interests, but not on the price of the human rights. And we are very, I think, lucky as of Kashmiris that the European Union, their high representative Federica Mogherini, also in the last tenure, and the new high representative also mentioned not once but several times that the dispute between India and Pakistan should be resolved peacefully, but they are watching the human rights violation occurring in that region, and they said that the people of Kashmir should be included in any negotiation, and no human rights violation should continue. And they are watching the situation in in Southeast Asia.
Sorry.
So, but now it's I think it is now the time for European Union also to take more active role to as they are taking role for other part of the world, for Africa, for Middle East. They have to take the more active role in Southeast Asia also, because this conflict between India and Pakistan, and it is the main sufferer, and the main party is the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and they are suffering, and they are suffering for last 70 years. Now, just some days ago, there was on the control line by the Indian security forces, they killed 6 people, the civilian who were just doing their daily work, or they were living. They were not, in hostile position or using anything. And these type of, like Roshan Saab has told about what is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir, it should stop. India cannot succeed. No government in the world can succeed in with the force. They have to negotiate, they have to discuss, and they have to resolve the issues of human rights. Unless they don't resolve, I don't think that the peace can be achieved. And our main objective is to peace and development in the region. So that can be achieved only when the human rights are protected. Thank you, Dr. Saab.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali Syed, the Honorable Chair of International Council for Women Development. Now I request Ms. Marjan Lucas to talk on her topic concerning international solidarity and the alliances. Thank you very much, Ms. Marjan Lucas.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, Dr. Sibtain, for having all these guests from all around the world. And I'm sad we cannot sit together and meet each other face by face, but this is wonderful that we can meet this way. And Ali, it's wonderful you escaped from Belgium to South Kashmir, but just let me bring you back for a moment in Brussels. Today we are on the eve of 10th of December, so International Human Rights Day. But tomorrow in Brussels there will be a European summit. And the summit will discuss, the European nation states, they will discuss the situation in Hungary and Poland, which call themselves democracies, but we better call them maybe illiberal democracies, if at all democracies. And that is also what a lot of Kashmiris always tell me about India. India calls itself a democracy, but in practice, is it a democracy for the people living, especially in the Indian occupied territory of Kashmir, and especially, for example, in Srinagar, as Roshan talked about. what happened these days, that because of this summit, there were journalists from for example, an Hungarian journalist, Veronika Munk, that she was interviewed in Dutch newspapers, and she said it is good that there is this summit, but I wonder why Europe didn't act already in the last years, because they know what is happening in my country, that her country is Hungary. They know what's happening in Poland, and now they discuss if these two countries can keep to be member of Europe, and if they meet the criteria. The criteria relates to democracy and human rights and law of justice. They knew for the last many years what was happening, and why do they wait until the system is so rotten? Can still something be done? And she fears that there will be some kind of compromise, because, well, that is on the one hand, because she says it is so rotten already in my country. Look at the rights of the women about abortion. Look at the freedom of speech for the journalists. Look at the limited space for lawyers. And also she said, well, it is good that politicians talk about this subject and that diplomats talk about the subject, but the change doesn't come from above usually. It usually is very important that people from below are supported, like me as a journalist, or like my friends in lawyers or human rights activists, women activists. So in that sense, she really advocates the support of the people on the ground, and this is always what was also my how to say, my leitmotif, my guidance in working with the Kashmiris in the last decades, I can say. It was always so important to see how can you support the people really living in the area that matters. How can you build alliances, and how can you make people heard and seen to tell the stories from the ground. And that is not easy. Mr. Bharti, he already mentioned for example, that the funding for NGOs are restricted by India. That was also that is a problem. But it is not. People, they say, okay, we don't let ourselves be silenced because of that. But for international alliances, that is a point to realize. There are other ways also to make people heard and seen. And for example, there is the idea of having awards for activists on the ground, or to invite them to speak either in person, like Mr. Ali Raza often did in Brussels, or as you do now on the screen. For example, the story of Mr. Bharti about the minorities in India it must be heard and it must be spread around. Well, my plea is really to push the politicians and the diplomats to act, to take their responsibility. But at the same time, we cannot achieve anything if we don't have also the alliances with the people on the ground. And I'm thinking about Parvina Ahangar, the chair of the APDP, as Roshan already mentioned. And also the politicians on the ground, like Yassin Malik and other Kashmiri leaders who are jailed. Well, let me say something has been achieved. Of course, it is not in vain that all these courageous people on the ground, that they raise their voice, like a UNHCR report is published about Kashmir in recent years. But it is that we have to keep on working and keeping looking forward all together, because unfortunately in this at present it is this neoliberal capitalist society which makes human rights at the bottom of their agenda. And this is what we are confronted with, and which we only can, turn maybe hopefully upside down if we work together in solidarity and in alliances with the people on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ms. Marjan Lucas. We extremely appreciate your efforts for the human rights, specifically your voice against the violation of human rights in different parts of the world, including Kashmir. Now, this session is the question, answers, and discussion session. I received some questions for our speakers. So first, I will read the questions, and then so one by one you can answer the questions. The question to Ms. Marjan Lucas is that is about the international community pressure, which was expected but could not be taken place concerning the rights of the people in Kashmir after the 5 August 2019, and the rights of the minorities in India, including the controversial citizenship bill which was adopted by the Indian government. And what are the reasons? Do you think that there are, beside the political factors, there are also economic reasons for that the international community is not pressurizing India?
That's a question for me, yes.
A question for you. And the second question for you is, as the human rights organizations are not allowed in Kashmir, and the offices of the various international organizations, including Amnesty International's, are closed and restricted in India.
Yeah.
So the people in Kashmir and minorities in India needs more solidarities. So I will raise all of the questions, and you can answer one by one. So questions for all of speakers.
Yes.
For Mr. Roshan Akbar is what actually happened after the revocation of Article 35A and 370. And the second question, what role is being expected by the United Nations concerning the Kashmir conflict? Because this Kashmir conflict is on the agenda of United Nations. There are Security Council resolutions on Kashmir. Question to Mr. Munawar is, do you think that terrorism in Pakistan impacted the human security, specifically the security of the different communities? And question to Mr. Simant Bharti is, why the solidarity of international community with the minority is not affected? And question to Mr. Syed is, what Kashmiri diaspora should do regarding the violation of human rights in Kashmir? You are based in Belgium, the European Union headquarters. So what you and your organization is doing? Secondly, why the voices from the Indian occupied Kashmir is not being responded at international level? And what is your achievement concerning human rights in Kashmir at European Union? I welcome for answering the questions one by one. So I'm starting from Ms. Marjan Lucas. You have the question.
Yeah, well, thank you. About the solidarity with the Kashmiris in the occupied Kashmir, I think there is solidarity, but we have to see in which ways we can continue. And like you mentioned, Amnesty International, Amnesty had problems always to work in Kashmir and publish a report. And what they did, which was, I thought, a smart way to do. There was a lot of debate about that also, but it was, I think, smart that they sent Indian academics and researchers to Kashmir who couldn't be stopped. Like, for example, myself, I was banned for more than 5 years. I was blacklisted. I couldn't enter Kashmir after the first visits and working years with the activists in Srinagar. But the embassy, they chose to work with the Indian activists and Indian researchers, and so they couldn't be stopped. But at the moment, now they also are, they are restricted. They cannot enter, and this shows the brutality, or this of the Indian government, that they simply do this. But we have to think, okay, what can be done now, and what is my very much I'm very disappointed about, despite what they also did in the European Parliament. But what I'm very disappointed about is that Europeans didn't manage to have a delegation of politicians to go to Kashmir. They just didn't, and that is, I think, connected to this other question about, is it only political or also economic? Are there economic reasons that Kashmiris are not supported internationally as they really want to and have to? And that is true. India and China and also Turkey, they are raising economies. And I think Europe is simply a little bit scared, if not very much scared, about the economical potential and power of these nations. And this is why such meetings as tonight, as you organized, and also tomorrow will be celebrated everywhere about human rights. It must be put forward that you cannot have an economical world order that simply denies human rights violations. Then we have a neoliberal capitalist, imperialist society, which is not for the human, but only for the money and the business, and that we cannot, let me speak for myself, I will not and never accept.
Thank you very much. Mr. Alila Syed, are you there?
He's not available, I guess.
Okay, Mr. Munawar, there's a question addressing you, that is about the impact of terrorism on the human security in Pakistan.
Thank you, Isha Saab. Actually, I was having some internet connection issue, so it took me a little longer to unmute myself. As far as your question is concerned, as you know that when after Pakistan entered in this so-called war on terror, or joined forces with America after the 9/11, more than 70,000 Pakistanis, irrespective of creed, caste, color, religion, they lost their lives in bomb blasts, in suicide attacks, in Fedayeen style attacks. Day in and day out, there were bomb blasts in the country. The worst victims, the worst casualty were the civilians during this war on terror. When you deprive somebody of their right to live, it is the greatest violation of human right, your fundamental human right. The first and foremost human right is our entitlement, is our right, is our claim to life. When you get killed, then it is the greatest violation of your human rights. So in other ways, you know that war on terror and this terrorism in Pakistan, it also led to destruction of livelihood. It also affected economic activity. It also affected infrastructure. Every walk of life was affected by this terrorism. So when you affect the economic activity, it leads to economic disruption. It leads to unemployment. It leads to poverty. It leads to different kinds of human rights violation and abuses directly and indirectly. So terrorism was a multi-dimensional, a sort of hydra-headed monster for Pakistan that caused a great destruction and that great damage to Pakistan in terms of economy, in terms of society, in terms of political stability, cultural activity. It affected every walk of life. It affected every aspect of normal human life that has to do with the human rights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munawar, man. Mr. Simant Bharti, there's also questions addressing you.
Ji.
Please answer the questions.
You ask about like CA protest happened in last year and even this year, and last year like Indian government changed the bring a law, the Citizen Amendment Bill, and that become Citizen Amendment Act, and this act is talked about like they only excluded the Muslim, and they imposed the law, and they told like there is a provision like people Hindu people and Jain, Sikh and Christian, they politically persecuted in Pakistan or Bangladesh, they are welcome and they can be citizen of India, but not Muslims. So this was a very controversial law, and it's against the human rights, and as you know, the Muslim were not part of this law, and this law also like threatened the several lives, even in the thousands of like more than thousands people they become homeless in the Assam. They imposed the CA just 2 years 3 years back, and the government, even the mass level protest took place in Delhi and several parts of India, even across the world, in front of Indian embassy, but due to COVID, and the Shaheen Bagh become very famous in Delhi, India, and there was a huge protest and 24 hours protest, and supported by the several NGOs and the law and human rights activists. But due to pandemic when arrived, and it's disappeared, and it was forceful to discontinue this movement, and that's why it's didn't continue. But nothing happened. Actually, you also asked like how like Modi is getting support. Like there is international aspects. India is the big consumer market of the world, and they have big trade relation with even China and other European Union and the Americas. And India is now more close to the US. So nobody care about what happening inside the India, if there is a human rights violation or not. So they don't care much of amount, and the Indian media and totally the mainstream media is controlled by the government. And there is one more aspect across the world. Recently, after the Trump came in the power in US, the right-wing government came in at the majority in everywhere in the world. So, and that was also one supporting factor for each others. Okay.
Thank you very much, Simant Bharti.
Shah Sahab, I have also got a question for the Simant.
Yes, please. First, you are first.
Yes.
Question should be short.
First of all, it's great to share space with you, Simant here. I have a question that unlike Pakistan, you know that we have a very struggling democracy, not a mature or established democracy. There have been frequent derailment of democracy in Pakistan. But unlike Pakistan, India has a very established and very stable democracy. But when I took at the human development indicators of India, irrespective of creed, caste, color, or religion, India lags far behind. It seems Indian democracy is unable to provide human security to its citizens. You know, the basic rationale behind the state and the politics and the democracy is a protection of your fundamental human rights, is the provision of human security. It seems it is an elitist democracy that caters to elite rather than its public. Look at the millions of people in India suffering from poverty, hunger, and disease. No doubt, it has a very huge population. But even then, look at the China. They have been able to lift millions of people out of poverty. But Indian democracy remains to fulfill its promise What is the use of democracy if there's no human security?
Recently many things changed. The Indian government has started privatization, and they don't focus on the welfare, and they minimizing the role of the welfare state. So this is one of the factor. And recently India sold many the government like government companies, even the railway and the airports, and so government is more focusing only the like regulatory role. They don't want to governing role, governance the things. So this is one of the factor. And recently after the coming this the BJP government in India, and they wants to, even they don't want to accept this constitution. They wants to change the word secularism. So and there is a one threat on the Indian constitution, and they have huge majority. So in the last few years they changed the several laws, and nobody opposed and nobody did anything against them. So and the poverty is rising due to the government is not caring the poor people, and they are telling we are caring, but in reality it's not reaching to the people.
Thanks very much, Mr. Simant Bharti.
Meanwhile, I wanted to add one more point to Mr. Munawar, and like current Indian government thinks the privatization is a way of they can minimize the poverty, they can reduce the poverty in India. So they are focusing more on privatization. So is special economic zone, even they are privatizing small things. Right now, you will see at the mass level the farmer movement. Ongoing across the India.
Yes, please, after Simant, you can talk, please.
And even government is also want to provide and regulate the price of the Indian foods, even agricultural products. So they wants to privatize, and they don't want small traders in this, and they wants to give this this thing to the big corporates, and they can regulate the markets of the agriculture markets of India.
And I request Mr. Roshan Akbar to answer the questions, but briefly, because we have very short time. Time is already over, but you can please answer the questions. You can unmute the mic and start, please.
Yes, please.
I think there's a problem with.
Maybe you can join again. That's why I guess.
Can disconnect and join again.
Yes.
So we were discussing the different aspects of human rights and the responsibility of human being.
Hello.
Yes. It's audible.
Please carry on. Once again, we have problem.
I'm sorry for this technical issue. I was not sure about it. And hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's okay now.
Good. Thank you very much, Irish speaker, for presenting their opinions as well as facts. I will speak briefly. So what happened on 5th August, it was the sudden abrogation of Article 35A and 370. No one was informed about it. There was no news that's going to happen. There was a propaganda run by the Indian government and administration in Kashmir that we are in a threat of a terrorist attack in Kashmir, so we are leaving all the people and tourists from Kashmir so that we can handle the situation. However, once they decided to abrogate these two articles, the next day only there was shutdown, there was a down of internet, and there was a blockade of whole communication. However, I was that time in Europe, and I was also shocked because I couldn't speak to my parents for more than 5 or 6 months. So it was all of a sudden, and being here in Europe, I was not even sure what's going on there because there was no communication, there was no news, there was no reports from the Kashmir. So I can say this is the very brief I can speak about it. About UN role on Kashmir, there have been several resolutions given by the United Nations. For example, one of the resolutions speaks about in 1950 that in Indian side there is going to be 18,000 security forces on the borders, but that figure has been raised to 1 million. There has been several resolutions like plebiscite or the right to self-determination. However, not a single has been worked out. So UN has played a role in Kashmir conflict, but I can say it's the oldest conflict in front of the United Nations, which has not been resolved yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roshan. Akbar, we discussed different aspects of human rights. Human rights in India, human rights in Indian occupied Kashmir, and about the human security. We also discussed about the uh, responsibility as human being. We also discussed about the international solidarity and uh, alliances. I think Mr. Ali Raza Syed is disconnected and he has a communication problem because he was supposed to answer the question, but he is not available here. But we can conclude this if Ms. Marian Locus
Yes.
want to say something at the
Yes,
conclusion.
just I'm a small representative, so to say, now about Ali. No, I worked for a long time with Mr. Ali Raza Syed in Brussels, and so I just want to stress that his dedication to the cause of Kashmir is really it's amazing, and he is persistent in his work, and it's not easy because, as you know, also in Europe, every 4 times or every 5 years, the European Parliament changes. So every time again and again, you have to explain it again. Where is Kashmir? What is this all about? And what's happening? What can we do? And this takes a lot of energy and persistence and also courage, because people say, okay, you have Kashmir, but we also have, now we have Azerbaijan, and we have the Uyghurs, and we have everywhere. And that is true, but we have to look at everywhere where it happens that human rights violations are violated. And so, Mr. Ali Raza, on his behalf, I want to say that really he keeps on working in European Parliament for example, by having the seminars there. In the pre-COVID time, and I hope that after COVID we again can meet in Brussels, in Geneva. Also, he organizes the seminars in Strasbourg even, and I hope that this is the part of the work that we can join. So as I said, that we have the alliances between the advocating activists like Mr. Ali Raza, the politicians, the diplomats, and as academics and researchers. And so this is my contributions. And I just want a last moment to say that I really like the picture of the Dal Lake for Roshan. So it really gives me nice memories of my time. And I also hope to once again to see Dal Lake in person myself again. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lucas, for useful comments.
If you have time, I would like to.
Munawar Mahar want to speak. They want to say something.
Actually, as we celebrate this International Human Rights Day tomorrow, we need to we need a great reset in our human rights laws and regimes. No doubt about the fact that this United Nations Human Rights Declaration in 1948, it was a milestone as far as the humanity is concerned, and it marked our social political evolution into evolution as a rational human being, and to our natural desire to have a just society. But we need to move beyond that. We need to have now a binding international laws and regimes, not voluntarily, because you know that the greatest threat and challenge to the human rights are the humans themselves. It is the state. We humans are a threat to our own human rights, and this changed context, global context, that now this pandemic and the growing climate change and this social media, they all conspire to further lead to further deterioration of human rights across the globe. So the humanity needs a new deal, a binding deal. Humanity needs to have a great reset in the human rights regimes and approach and thinking.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munawar. I'm once again thankful to all of our distinguished speakers, and I hope that your opinion, your comments, your analysis would be beneficial for the masses in order to understand the human rights of the people, and as well as the responsibility as human being to respect the rights of other people. And I hope that we will be also next time on another important topic we will discuss.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you, Shah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And we will. Thank
Thank you
you.
for the kind words.
you.
I'll be sharing it
Yes,
soon. Thank you.
really. Thank
All
you.
the best,
Thank you. All
everyone.
the best. All the best. All the best. Thank you.
No,